Hi, my name is Rex Beanland, and I recently had the privilege of doing a demonstration for the Toronto Watercolour Society. And I didn't get it, I got it about half finished during the meeting, so I brought it home and I'm going to work on it here and film it so that everyone can see how I would finish it off. So let's take a look at the painting as it was at the end of the workshop, and let's get started. Okay, here's the picture just as I left it at the end of the meeting, and so I'm going to carry on. I just thought first I would introduce my colors here. I have cad yellow, yellow ochre, cad orange, cad red light, alizarin crimson, burnt sienna. This is a new color I'm just experimenting with that I like a lot, transparent pyrrole orange. Cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, dioxazine purple, neutral tint, a color, very opaque watercolor that I use for accents, cobalt teal, and viridian. First, there's just this shape on the one car there that I want to correct. It's been bothering me for a while. Just curve it the other way, that's it. Now I almost always use cobalt or ultramarine with burnt sienna to get a dark value. It's possible to get it very quickly with these colors. Now I just want to start developing these other cars. And the windshield. With cars, if you get the windshield and the shadow underneath, it's always going to read as if it's a car. Just zoomed in here to see a little bit better. I really like this arrangement of these cars, the 5 cars coming straight at you. It's kind of neat. Now put the tires on them. You just see a little bit of this. And if it's wet and wet, that's just fine. This is very wet. Now this car over here, it's completely in shadow. So I think I'll just go over the whole car. And define it more later on. Then some cad orange. It's what I almost always use for the heads of figures. So for now I just kind of want to locate where these figures are going to be. And the cad orange, in fact all the cads are actually an opaque watercolor. So they're quite happy going over a dark background, and they look nice and bright. And this sidewalk here helps define the car. I'm just laying in these figures, even though it's really wet, but this will be fine. It kind of connects them more with the background. And these gaps between the figures, when I'm not really sure what I want in there, but I want something, just kind of scumbling around there will indicate some detail. And here, just a first go at this figure, just to kind of place it. I'm just using this dark value here to kind of bring out the figures a little bit more. Now I can start developing this car. moving these cars way in the background. This is a really important element, even though it's quite small in size, and that's the shadows cast by these cars. It indicates the sun is almost directly overhead, which is useful to bring out the white hoods. Just a light value of red. Yeah, this car, all the darks was a bit severe, so just tone it down around the edges. Yeah, just reinforce the shadow there. And I want to try every time I do something on the car to integrate it into the foreground, so I'm just letting it run down there. I'm saving this figure's legs because I like to try and get dry brush. And these shapes add a little bit of interest into the background there, so just begin them. And I also want to kind of give them more context. I'm just lifting out underneath them. Now, the road was one wash, and it's a lovely wash, but there was no gradation in it, so I kind of want to add a little contrast. So I'm just adding a bit more color to the foreground to give it a little more sense of depth. Okay, while I'm kind of waiting for this, I'm going to do some of the detailing in the background. And I really like to use dry brush for this. And you notice very little water added to this, so it's almost a buttery mixture, which is just great for getting dry brush. So this detail creates a greater sense of depth by bringing the the buildings that are closer, brings them forward a bit. And I'm more or less just making this up, you know, however it sort of speaks to me. It doesn't really relate to the photograph. Another go at this figure. And now trying to make sure I have a very buttery mixture and try and get a little bit of dry brush for the legs. That's it. Now these trees, they are just the top of them is catching the light, so I want to darken most of the tree. And for a dark color that reads as a tree, I find adding purple very effective. It reads actually as a dark green. I just want to pay attention to the edge here, so I'm trying to create an effect that will read as if it's leaves or foliage. Really working the brush in here. And a little red for some value or color contrast. Softening some of the edges. And do the same on this tree. I like to try and really use the brush rather than trying to paint detail. Again, soften some of these edges. I'm adding a little Chinese white on this thumb pad here because it stays pretty clean up there, with some cobalt blue, because I want this figure to be light against the dark. Put a little hair on him. Now on this lighter figure, it's now lighter, you can add something that looks like shirts open or jackets open. And here I just want to scumble some shapes that will kind of connect this main, more important figure with the edge of the paper. And again here. define these figures a little bit more carefully and add a nice dark behind them, because I really want this area to draw your eye. So I'm picking up lots of colors to get a nice rich dark. I just want to strengthen the front of this car, so I'm basically going right over the white because I can add that later. And some detail on this car. And there's lots, even though I like the idea, I want the idea of the sun blazing off these hoods, there are various lines in there, which again reinforce the perspective. And this is kind of an interesting part. With white, which should be your strongest contrast, white paper against darks, sometimes when you leave it pure white, it's kind of can get kind of dull, but I find if you take away some of the white, which I'm doing here, it makes the white that's left seem even stronger or work harder, as they say. And now a really important element to this picture are these streetcar wires. So I'm just turning it upside down to make it a little easier. And you just got to do these as much as possible in one stroke. If they get a little wonky, just live with it. But these will really lead the eye right down to the center of interest. And if you don't quite get it in one stroke, then you have to kind of go and detail it. Yeah. So I'm just toning this, the value down a bit as the wires are getting further away. Great lead into the center of interest. And I always like to add a Canadian flag, so some cobalt, or pardon me, cadmium red light, which is a very opaque watercolor. Straight out of the well there, and there you go with the flag. Now the dash on this car is just catching the light. It's just catching the light through the window, so I'm just scrubbing this. Almost gives a greater sense that you're actually looking into the car. And now with pure Chinese white, and then just softening it with a damp brush, gives the effect of the sunlight either shining through the windshield or reflecting off it. And this can sometimes be a neat effect, applying the Chinese white just with your with a finger. And some real nice dark details on these cars. or this car. And I always use the pure Chinese white or white gouache to outline the head and the shoulders of figures. It just makes them pop from the background. Very neat effect. And then some of the lines on the road. Again, very little water here. For a dry brush of the sidewalk and the bottom of the building. And then I need some of these kind of final details to connect the foreground and the background, in effect pushing the background even further. So even though it wasn't in the photo, a lamp post here, or a street light, or a traffic light, very effective. And again, pure cad red light. The black's just a little bit wet, so I'll leave that for now. And here you can see how you can paint a bright, light color right over the darkest wash when you're using these opaque watercolors. Same with the cobalt teal here. Again, taking away some of the white here. No, I just felt that some of these shadows or whatever needed to be connected with the edge of the page. Yeah, now this one shape up here, it just doesn't make sense. It takes away from these bits of detail, so I'm just going to cover this in. That's better. I like the idea of this post, but it just seems like it could go a little bit higher, so I'm actually importing the kind of lights we have here in Calgary, transposing them to Vancouver, where I took this photo. And again, I'm taking some Chinese white, and there's your lights. And these bits of white here and there really bring out these shapes. Again, they make them pop from the background. Try a little calligraphy for some details. Okay, so that's the painting, and that's pretty much the process that I use for urban landscapes. And I hope you've gotten something out of this. Once again, I'd really like to thank the Toronto Watercolour Society for inviting me down. And I just wanted to say I've lived with the painting for a couple of days now, and as always, I saw a few more things I'd like to change. So I've made a couple of extra changes, and this is now the final painting. Thank you.